Okay, it's time for the final season finale, series finale, Samurai Criterion thing. Samurai 3, Duel Ganryu Island. 1956, we're here. Now we're in 1956. Every year he did a new movie. This Mr. Hiroshi Inagaki, he just wanted to move this story on and on and on. Every year kept bringing back Toshiro Mifune. He had nothing better to do now that his well, maybe he did. Maybe he was a big star in Japan by this point. I'm not sure where it was. Well, I think next was Seven Samurai in 57. I think it was 57 when he did Seven Samurai. So the best was yet to come for Mr. Toshiro. Anyway, so we're in the third installment. This is number 16 now, movie 16, and this is definitely the thrilling conclusion that we've definitely been looking for. I mean, this is probably the most dramatic of them all, and from all the weirdness that happened in the middle, that weird little weirdness that happened in number 2, and yeah, and looking back, it made sense to introduce Koshiro early on in the series, earlier in the series than just like at the beginning of the third movie. It wouldn't make sense to introduce him just in the third movie and say, oh shoot, well this guy is really tough, it made sense. Oh, just go back and do it on the second one. So there you go. So anyway, basically this one, Musashi is still traveling. He's still got that little kid with him. And he gets a new disciple after picking flies with the chopsticks, and Koshiro is traveling the same path, sort of, with his sword clothes rod. And now I understand what clothes rod is. When I saw it in the first movie, the second movie, I was like, what the heck is clothes rod? So at one point they eventually meet, and they challenge each other to a duel to end all duels. Musashi has to keep putting it off because he travels and he's trying to take care of Otsu, finds him, and what's her name, the other woman, Akemi, who turns into a prostitute or something like that, or some geisha girl, not geisha girl, but probably, yeah, I don't know. She's disgraced because she sells herself or something. I don't know what's going on. There's all kinds of crazy stuff, little plots and subplots that eventually build up to the final scene, which we'll get to in a minute. But basically, I guess he ends up going with Otsu because Akemi dies at one point. There's finally this one scene where you finally get a little bit of a cat fight between Otsu and Akemi, where at one point it feels like the village that Musashi and Otsu and Akemi apparently all seem to be in at one point. Akemi finally challenges Otsu to a duel, an axe duel. Throws her knife or an axe and says, "Here, take it, throw it at me." And so they finally just start fighting. They knock over a little lamp, and it sets on hay. And of course, you know what happens with fire and hay, just and they burn. And then just so happens these brigards were gonna ambush the village anyway, so they're like, "Hey, this is a perfect chance. All right, let's go, guys." And trying to save Otsu's life, Akemi stabs this brigand with the back end of a hoe, the spiked end of a hoe, and in dying he ends up slicing her throat or cut and sword and stomach, chest area right here or something, and she dies, and Musashi runs and holds her, and she's like, "This is all what I wanted all the time." There's one point, and it's just a trip. It's just so dramatic and so lovey-dovey you want lovey-dovey and all that. But anyway, the basic finale, it just pretty much ends with the scene. Musashi versus Koshiro. Head to head at last. And it's pretty epic. I mean, it's short, of course. They're not you'd think that this guy being the biggest biggest rival yet. You'd think that he'd be, more of a, be like a half-hour duel where they run around the entire island and make advantage of like, the trees. But I guess that's not, one, that's not the way of the warrior, and two, that's not the way of Japanese movies back then. It's like the duel happens when however long it happens. That's just how it is. So basically, what you've got is a really short scene where they tried to pack as much dramatics in this one scene. And here is where Inagaki's direction falls into play even better. There's this, and that, and of course the climax of it is when they both cut each other, and Toshiro, and they show Musashi a close up of his face, and he's breathing through his teeth, and you see this gash. And when I was watching it, I was like looking at, you looking at his face, you're looking at this guy, what is he looking at? But then you notice that on his forehead there's a gash, and he's bleeding, and it looks so deep, and he's like, and it's just like, and I was just, and it's bleeding, and he starts bleeding just right down the middle of his forehead, and it's like, woo-hoo-hoo! Actually, it's probably it's on this end. Anyway. And Kojiro just smiles and just and faints as he realizes at least he hurt him. Maybe that's what Kojiro just wanted after all. Even though he was to die, at least if he had hit Musashi, then maybe that's all he wanted out of it. So, and then Musashi just goes home victorious, but he still feels, I think he does feel a little forlorn that he lost the greatest fencer he ever met, which he does call him. He's the greatest fencer he ever met. And it's a bit of a tragic scene. You do see him cry just before they cut to the boat traveling away. You do see kind of a tear from his eye, and he kind of bows his head in memory of him, and that's how the movie ends. Bit quick and all that. No real reunion with Otsu. They do that before the end of the movie, before the duel, before the battle, and maybe that's just that makes a little more sense. It's about the samurai, the samurai as a person, the samurai way, and the samurai. One thing that most people think about when they think of samurai is the dueling, the fencing, the fighting, not the love and all that. We gotta take care of that before we get to the main issue, which is the fighting. And that's, I guess, what Inagaki was thinking about. So there you go. Anyway, so that's all I got to say about that one. Grade A-. It's definitely the best of the three series of the series. Only minus just because a couple of the scenes did feel a little strenuous, but all the main points, all the main actors, Otsu, Okemi, Musashi, Kojiro, they all gave their all in this one. This was the one movie where everything just came together and it just really clicked. And so speaking of that, when we look at the series, and when I'm looking at this series as a whole, I feel like it definitely meant something. It probably means something a little more if you watch them in the space that it took them to make these. Like you watch one in one year, and then the next year you come back, and it's like, suddenly everything kind of, it's a little more, it's a little more rewarding because you're forced to remember all this stuff, so that next year when you see the sequel, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that point. They do show some flashbacks, just a couple of small flashbacks, but they're not the ones that really, they don't summarize the movie too well. I mean, they're just basically smaller plot points, smaller ideas that don't, and even then the scenes don't really help you remember what happened. If you want to know exactly what happened, you have to watch the scene in its actual movie. So yeah, I mean, that's basically all I had to say about the series as a whole. And that's basically all I have to say about the samurais. We're done with the samurais! Samurai 3, Duel at Ganryu Island. It's the, yeah, anyway. So, there you are. Samurai Trilogy. Done. Supplements. There are supplements. I mentioned, I think, in the first one, there are supplements for those new interviews. Don't have them on this one. These are the original pressings. All they added the trailers, the trailers, henceforth, the summaries of the movie. If you don't want to watch the movie, just watch the trailer and you'll be fine. Except for this one, because they have the sense to not show, they showed very little of the duel at the end. They showed them preparing, but nobody struck. And I like that. I'm like, thank goodness they did that. So, anyway, that's all I got. And that's all we got for you tonight. Number 17. Yeah, number 17. Salo, or the 100 Days of Sodom. This one looks tough. This one looks difficult. It's an Italian one. It's about 2 hours long. Probably get to it on Tuesday, maybe tomorrow. Not quite sure. It'll be either tomorrow or Tuesday. And that's, yeah, and like I said, this one looks it's probably the most disturbing yet. So we may have some things to say. Just warning you guys, those of you who have seen it. Those of you who haven't, don't worry, I'll take care of you. And on that note, that's it. Watch the Criterion. Go get the Samurai. Go get the remastered version. I wish I had the remastered, or I don't know if it's remastered, this repackaged one that has all three of them in the same thing, and go get your Samurai on. And all that. And until next time, tomorrow or Tuesday, we'll see you for Salo, or the 100 Days of Solemn. And that is it. Goodbye.